You're listening to The Art of Imperfect Adulting. I'm your host, Amy Stone. Here, I share stories from real people navigating the adventure that I call adulting. Are you ready? Me too. Let's do this. Well, hello, friends. In this episode, I'm going to introduce you to Angela Downey. Dr. Angela Downey. We talk about a time in her life where she made a career change. Now, I'm lucky to get to talk to a lot of people about making changes of all different types in their life. And I think that you are going to enjoy this story in particular because of the level of commitment, determination, and downright perseverance that it took for Angela to make this happen. So Angela shares with us very openly and very candidly about the actual real challenges and setbacks, both in practical terms and also emotionally in mindset, and real comments from people in her life that got in the way and could have been setbacks and full blocks to making this happen. So if you are listening to this at a time where you might be thinking to yourself, oh, you know what? I want to do this thing, but I don't know if I can. I don't know if I'll be able. I don't know if, it's what I'm going to be able to do. This story might really be exactly what you want to hear. So if you're ready, let's do this. Dr. Angela Downey, welcome to the Art of Imperfect Adulting. I can actually say welcome back because this is the interview so nice. We're doing it twice. Are you ready for a fun chat today?
I sure am. Thanks for having me again, Amy.
You're welcome. It's not for the listeners. It's only the first time, but we recorded this and I've talked about it a little bit on social media. This is interview number 128. And it's the first one where I actually forgot to turn my microphone on for the first recording and did not notice until I went back to listen to it. And my actual note, which I already shared with Dr. Angela, was grr. That's the note I made for myself. So I started all my interviews asking people what part of the world they call home. Where are you?
I'm in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, which is just north of North Dakota.
Love it. Love it. Just north of North Dakota. I have been to every state in the United States except for Alaska so far, but North Dakota is definitely a state where I'm like, I've not spent a ton of time there, and I have not been to that part of Canada, so I have to put it on my list of explorations. In a second, we're going to start the official interview talking about career change. I'm going to ask you one more warm-up question. What is the most recent that you can bring to mind compliment or word of kindness that you have shared with somebody? It can be something small and it can be something from just earlier today or yesterday.
A word of kindness. I went up to a woman in the store the other day and told her I really liked her shirt. She was a complete stranger and I really did like the shirt, but her face lit up, which was lovely.
I am loving this question. It's a slightly awkward question that I've been asking people for a while, and people do not have a ready to go answer for it. But I'm loving the answers because it's fun to reflect on the nice things we do with the people around us, whether they're people in our family and stuff or strangers, like you said. That is a brilliant story. I'm sure it was a brilliant shirt. I am also a person who gives strangers compliments. And I think that it adds fun. It just adds joy to my day. I'll say that.
Sure. And when I've been on the receiving end, if somebody's like, "Oh, I love your curls," and this is a complete stranger, it does brighten up your day. And I thought, that's something I can easily do for someone else as well.
Yeah.
It takes 2 seconds out of my day. You say it in passing, and their face lights up, and someone's day is just made a little bit better.
Right. Oh, I love that. All right. Topic of the day. Once upon a time in a land long, long ago, you were an accountant. You had a baby. Today, you are a medical doctor. That's a massive shift, guys. So we're going to talk about how that shift happened, and I have lots of questions. So let's start with this. When you were younger, when you were a kid, what did you want to grow up to be? Did you have a vision of wanting to be an accountant when you were younger?
No. I'd always wanted to be a doctor, and I loved trying to fix people. If anybody had like a scraped knee or anything, I was in there. I was like, I'm going to do this for a living, and I would patch them up and do all sorts of stuff. And I really wanted to be a physician, and that, people thought it was great and a good job. But my family is a very blue collar family. Nobody went to university. So the messaging as I got older started to shift a little bit, and it became, if you want to have a family, maybe you shouldn't be a doctor. Maybe you should, maybe be a nurse or physiotherapist. But, women with children shouldn't be physicians, and you're not going to have time to raise your family. People like us don't become doctors. That's for like the elite, the special people. So the messaging as I got older shifted a little bit. And sure enough, as I started going through university, I had a great time, but I failed my first year of university, unfortunately. So I had no idea how to study. I didn't know how much time it would take to put stuff in, and I had a great time. So I failed my first year of university, and that really shifted where I could go in the future. So I shifted
Yeah.
into an accounting type program, and failing that first year just reconfirmed everything to me that people like us didn't become physicians, right? I went to
Oh.
public school. There's no other physicians in my family. Nobody really. My grandmother worked as a nurse for a couple of years before she started having children, but nobody in my family was a physician. So I had no guidance and didn't know what to study. And I can, I don't want to blame anybody else for me not getting into medicine. I failed my first year and I made that decision to switch to something different, but I switched to an accounting program. Did very well. At that point, I knew what it took to, study and be a little bit more involved in my schoolwork. So I finished that and yeah, but always regretted not becoming a doctor.
So there's a lot to unpack here. And so one of the things I'll say is you touched on a couple of things. One is I'm going to guess that you've done some work in unpacking the role of your family on your thoughts about
Yeah.
yourself.
Yeah.
So we call that the origin story. Like, where do you come from, and what's the impact of your, first
Hmm.
community, your family, your early schooling? And listening to you tell the story was the hint that you had unpacked it, because a lot of times you're unaware of the messaging that you get as a
Yeah.
young kid. So do you really remember? I mean, I'm not questioning your events, but I'm asking, was it through reflection of implied stories and examples around you, or do you remember people actually saying to you, "Hey, medical school is not for people like us"?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, people
That was
really
the
said
message.
it. Okay, people
Yeah.
really said it.
There was a lot of you should consider being a nurse,
Okay.
was the message I got over and over and over again.
Which is
Um,
interesting because nursing school in 2025 is as expensive and intensive as medical school, I think.
it is. And it's to date, I walk into a room to see a patient, and some people think I'm the nurse coming in.
Oh,
In the hospital, I would go approach a patient, and I could say I'm a medical student, and their immediate association was that this is the nurse. She's a medical student nurse, and
and you
when
think
I would
that's
say
still
no, no,
just gendered?
it still happens. It
Yeah.
it still happens. Sometimes so I'm a family physician. I bring patients into the room, so I'll go out in the waiting room. I'll call their name. I'll bring them in, and they think I'm the receptionist because I'm doing this.
Okay. And
And
is your
then the
guess,
assumption,
let me ask you if, because you probably don't know what's in their head. Is your guess because you're female or because of ethnicity, or what's your guess about or
I
age, or what's your
feel that
guess?
I feel that it's my sex. I think it's
Okay.
because
All
I'm
right.
female. And it tends to be a lot of the older generations who make those assumptions.
Sure.
But yeah, that's been something that's been ongoing throughout all of medical school, residency, and even now as a practicing physician, I do get it from time to time. Maybe not as often. You definitely
Which
see a
is good
lot of
news.
female physicians out there,
So yeah, so we're a
and people
little
are
off
getting used to
topic.
seeing it.
Yeah, we're a little off topic, and we'll get back to it. Like, but I think it's one of the through lines and the things I try to do with this show is tell stories. It's very easy for some 51. It's very easy for me to believe that the things that were a challenge for me, or the things that were a
Mhm.
challenge for my mom and my grandmother and all of those, are no longer a challenge for the younger
Yeah.
generation. So it would be super easy for me to say, oh, well, because, there are a lot of women doctors, young women doctors may not be experiencing this, but it turns out that we're not quite all the way through it. We're not quite all the
Mhm.
way through it. And so I think it's an important story to share. So the other thing you touched on is that when you got to university, to college, you weren't ready.
No.
And so The wonderful thing about modern life is that we have all these opportunities to reset. But university, you do have the flexibility to reset, but that transcript follows you
It
through,
does.
right? It's not like
Hmm.
second grade English spelling tests, which disappear when you go to middle school, and the high school transcript that no one asks for once you go to college. You mess
Yeah.
it up in college, you got to deal with it going forward. You can still do amazing things and you're evidence of that, but
Hmm.
you have to deal with that first setback. So you went and I love this story so you went back and you retooled as an accountant, and was that like a certificate or a degree? I don't know if there's a
That
difference in Canada.
it was actually a diploma. It
Diploma.
was,
Okay.
yeah, it was a diploma in like kind of like a business admin accounting program.
Okay.
And so it wasn't my bachelor's. So when I decided I wanted to go back into school to become a doctor at the age of 26, I had to do a degree at that point, which
Okay.
was good because from a university perspective, I had a GPA of 1.8, which
Whoa.
is terrible. It's
Out of
so
four?
terrible.
Out of four? Is that the scale out of four?
4.5 here.
4.5. Okay. So I'm glad I
Mhm.
asked because it's not always the same. At one point, one of my kids was in a
Yeah.
high school where they were using a 12-point scale, which is not fair. Like everybody should, like, it's like
Yeah.
if you're comparing things, that should be roughly the same. So 4.5. Still though, not top of the heap.
Terrible.
Okay.
No, terrible. And unfortunately, it stays with you. So when I
Yeah.
applied when I was 26, I was like, I'm a mature student now. I feel like this should be erased. It does not get erased. But I was told about a loophole that for every 3 extra classes that you took, you could boot off a bad grade. So,
Oh, okay.
mhm. So I took 9 extra classes, which got rid of 3 of my absolute worst grades. And then my GPA started jumping up. But it did take, quite a few like summer courses, spring session courses, just to get those extra courses under my belt. And there
That's
was no such thing as I could not get anything lower than I got one B plus, but everything else was A's and A plus the whole way through. There was no room to get anything less than that when I went back
right.
to school.
And at that time when you went back, you understood the game you were playing.
Yeah, I
Is
did.
part you understood what you were doing, which is one of the
Mhm.
things. There's a lot of pressure on, and this is not a criticism of anything, it's just an observation, but there's a lot of pressure on young people, 18, 17, 19, when you start that first go around with higher education to nail it and perform in a game they don't quite understand at that
Yeah.
time, and so it's not a bad situation, but it's a tremendous growth opportunity. And so that is very good. How long, so you were 26 when you went back to school. How long did you work as an accountant?
I did it for a couple of years. I did have a little business that I started in my home as well, a telecommunications business. And once I went back to school, got my science degree, I didn't get into medicine right away. Well, the first time I applied, I had a 3-month-old, and it was a lot going on. So I didn't get in right away. And then at that point, because I had a degree, then I got a job in finance as a risk analyst. So I was able to continue working and move up in the kind of accounting finance world, but I still wanted to get into medicine. And
Yeah, so you
that
had this
was that was my
long time
ultimate goal.
dream. Yeah,
Yeah.
long time dream. And then I think that what is evident to me talking to you about this is that you can hustle. Like you were
Yeah.
getting things done. So you were, even though you sort of tanked that first year in higher education, you turned it into a diploma and a viable job. You set up a side hustle, a home business in
Yeah.
telecommunication, which does that mean selling data plans and phones and things like
So
that?
this
Or
was, yeah, yeah. So reselling phone lines. So this was before everybody had a cell phone
okay,
and, people relied on landlines. So I don't know if you remember the company Canada Reconnect,
no,
but it
no,
was something similar to that. I'm sure there was something the equivalent in the US, but
probably,
yeah.
probably.
And when I decided to go back to school, I met with school counselors and whatnot to try and figure out if this was the best route for me. And I was told that I would never make it into medicine and that I should just stop now because at that point I had a child. I ended up having a second child a couple years into that as well. And there was just They're like, there's no point in you wasting your time doing all this to get into medicine because you're never going to get in. So that was the message I got year after year. And I was like, oh,
So
I'm
you were
sorry. Ugh.
26 when when
Yeah.
they were getting that message, and the people who were saying that were administrators and counselors, like in admissions.
Yeah. And the medicine admissions committee was
Wow. All right.
telling me that.
So
Yeah.
that's not an easy message to hear. Let's
No.
talk about so you have a childhood dream that's going on, and you're getting pretty assertive guidance to turn away from this. And it
Yeah.
is a long road. Like,
It is.
academically speaking, the road through medical school is long, and takes a long time. How did it feel, if you remember back then, when people said that to you? You have this deep dream to do this, and you at this point you're very aware of the challenge that's in front of you, because you're living your life. You're the one who has the
Yeah.
kids and living in the home. How did it feel when people said that to you?
It's Well, I recognized that was a big risk that I was taking because I'm putting everybody in my household kind of on my schedule, right? Now we're having to live below the poverty line because I don't have any money coming in. We're living very cheaply. A lot of people made a lot of sacrifices, my partner and my children, for me to pursue this dream. So like the thought of failing was just like there was a lot of pressure there to not fail and to continue. Um, it was hard getting this messaging all the time from some people saying that, you're not gonna do this. And I just like honestly, that just lights a fire under me. Like the minute somebody says you can't do something, I'm like, I'm gonna show you, right? Like I'm gonna work super hard and get this done. So if nothing else, I feel like it just motivated me to work hard and get things done. It did make me feel very alone. However, I felt
Okay.
like I did not have, my partner was very supportive, but I didn't feel like I had a lot of support anywhere else. And I got the feeling that people thought maybe I was just a little bit crazy. And so it's
So
hard when you feel like you're not getting the support that you need, but that's kind of when you need to know that you have it within yourself to do this, and you have to be confident that you can work hard and get to where you need to be.
so I want to click a little more on that, which is doesn't that's a phrase that doesn't mean anything, but I want to push a little
Hmm.
deeper, right? Because the concept of when we're faced with rejection, it lights a fire under us. That's like a sound bite that I hear a lot, and it's not
Yeah.
that I don't believe it, but I want to talk about the in the moment of it, because there are decisions in my own life where I'm like, all right, somebody says this is going to be hard. You really do have an opportunity to look at it and be like, is this going to be worth what it's going to take to get it done? Did you go through that in your mind, like where it was like, all right, this person is an obstacle. This is going to be
Yeah.
hard. Why
Hmm.
do I think it's worth it? Did you think about that?
I did a little bit, but I think I had some tunnel vision there.
Okay.
I had my eye on the prize. I knew where I was going. I knew where I wanted to go, and I was not going to let anybody stand in my way. In hindsight, so my daughter was a year old when I started my science degree, and she was 14 the year I graduated. So for like 14 years of her life, mom was a student and was trying really hard and doing all this stuff. So looking back, had I known it was going to take, 13 years of schooling, it's a bit of a different, you kind of look at it from a different perspective, right? You have all of this student debt. You're now 40
Yeah.
years old. You got all this debt. You've missed out on, your kids growing up a little bit. You've done the best that you can and spent whatever time you could with them, but there was a lot of sacrifices that went in there. And you wonder, yeah, if it was worth it. I am so glad that I'm here. And I'm
Yeah.
glad that I took the steps that I needed to get here. And I'm glad I didn't know ahead of time how hard it was going to be. Once you're in
Interesting.
it, yeah, once you're in it, you're just taking one step at a time, one day at a time. But yeah, it's hard to know what I would have done had I known how difficult it was going to, how difficult a road it was going to be.
And so now, my children are young adults, and there's truth in the phrase that there's never a perfect time to start that
Yeah.
parenting journey. But when you have things that take a long time and commitment, it is interesting to look at it through the rearview mirror. So, like, if you had gone into medical school or started the medical school process when you were 18, it still would have taken a significant amount of time.
Hmm.
If you delay the choice to start a family until the end of that, you are making a different sacrifice because then the job of that professional thing is interfering or competing with the demands of young childhood. Like it's a different challenge, right? And that's why people, and you're older as a parent. So it's like older as
Hmm.
a student, older as a parent. There's different things. So,
I
um,
some of the I don't want to call them kids.
no,
They're colleagues and I love them to pieces. So some of the people I went through medical school with, they went right out of high school. And
yeah.
so when we graduated, I've got teenagers, they're now adults, and my colleagues are just starting their families now. And they're having to go through IVF treatments and,
Yes.
any of the complications that come with having children after you've established your career. There are some consequences that come with that, and sometimes getting pregnant is difficult. And
Which is a shocker for
I,
those of us who grew up with a message that it was so easy to get pregnant, by the way. Like this
mhm,
is like the funny thing about being a woman in 2025. It's like if you were raised with a thing like, be very careful, which is good advice.
yeah,
Be very careful, be very intentional, do those things. And then your friends or you are going through infertility treatment. You're like, didn't realize this was going
yeah.
to be,
You can
thought
you
this
can get
was
pregnant. It just gets really expensive,
right.
and
Hopefully, yes.
requires a little bit more work and some medical interventions there. But yeah, it was. I kind of like that my children are older now, and I get to, some people graduate high school and they go backpacking and do all their traveling then. I had to wait a couple more years, and now I'm doing my traveling, not quite
Yeah.
backpacking anymore, but
I love that. I love it. There is this idea. One of the things that is a through line in the stories I'm getting to tell, which I reflect on and I think is very good, is that many of us of a variety of generations have a story playing in our head that there's one singular correct path that we're supposed to be following to success and happiness and Valhalla and whatever we believe. But if you sit down and talk to people, you'll find that there's a hundred different ways, a million different ways to skin this cat, right? And one of those is the timeline. So, whether you have kids when you're young, when you have kids when you're old, whether you go to school right away, whether you nail your first profession, those are all different ways to follow the path. And the power in sharing the stories, I think, as the guide, is that it's very easy to turn the judgment lens in on ourselves and
yeah,
think, oh, I've done this wrong. And in your case, I'm getting a very loud message that I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing, and to make it like there's something wrong with me. I'm doing things wrong.
yeah,
How
yeah.
did you, or what are some of the ways that you worked through the loneliness and the doubt and kept your perseverance along the path? 13 years, that was a very long project.
Hmm. Yeah, it definitely wasn't a perfect road, and those doubts definitely came crashing down on occasion. I have burnt out on two separate occasions where I just
Does that mean you took a break?
I did, yeah. So
That's
I
a
took a
that's a great
break.
part of the story, actually.
Yeah, I took a break in my third year of medicine, about halfway through. Um, it was too difficult to manage going to school because at that point we were working on the wards. So we're working 70 hours a week. And then every third week we'd put in a 100-hour week, right? Because we do these like consecutive 24-hour shifts.
That's
And
insanity, by the way.
it's
Can we
crazy,
just
right? So you
talk
do,
about that?
yeah, no, it was insane. And I didn't get to come home and go to sleep. I got to come home and cook dinner and help kids with homework, things like that. So it didn't end. And there was a couple of days where I was up for 40 consecutive hours and I went to bed because my heart was beating abnormally. I developed some kind of arrhythmia after 40 hours of being awake. And that's why I would go to bed. Not because, my kids didn't need me anymore, but it was like, I need to go. And so instead of going to the hospital, I just go to sleep and hope that I wake up. But there were a couple of
That's like
times
a
like that.
crazy story. Oh my gosh, Angela,
Yeah.
that's such a crazy story. It's like the doctor heal thyself, or like, the kid
Oh,
who's
we're
got a
terrible
doctor as a parent.
patients.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The doctor takes perfect care of his patients, but his kids come in and are like, my arm is bleeding,
Yeah.
and he's like, you'll be fine.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I mean, I knew something like I knew it was because I was tired, right? I'd been up for 40 hours and that's just you're not going to be at your best. But all this invisible labor that you have at home, making sure that everybody's laundry is done,
Yeah.
making sure that, I still want to take care of my kids and I want to help them with their Halloween costumes and making sure that, so and so gets their dental appointments. There's this invisible load that women carry at all times, and that doesn't go away just because you're in medical school. So I ended up taking a break for 6 months once things became a little bit overwhelming. And when I went back to school, I hired a mother.
To help you at home.
Yeah, yeah. She took care of me and my kids. So it was lovely, and that was very helpful for me. That's what I needed at that time to be successful.
Where did you get the idea to do that? Did you come up with it yourself?
It was a counselor who had suggested it.
Truly brilliant. Did you get any pushback from people in your family or around you when you were like, I'm going to hire help at home?
No, not really, because I think
Okay,
people
good.
saw, yeah, people saw how hard I worked, and a lot of times people were like, I don't know how she does it, right? I don't know how she does all this stuff. So it wasn't a stretch for me to hire somebody.
That's
And
really good. Sometimes
yeah,
I've heard stories of people getting pushback for, they're very busy and they bring help in at home. And then, and it is a thing that in the business world and the professional world, delegating is respected. But every once in a while you run into a situation where it's like, well, you're not allowed to have help on that part. You still
so
gotta do your own laundry.
yeah, so fourth year of medicine's not as heavy. So I, didn't have a housekeeper for that. I managed on my own. But when I went into residency, I knew it was going to get heavy again. And at that point, we hired a live-in nanny to help with things.
I love all the parts. All right, I want to take a second and talk directly to the audience,
Okay.
invite you to the conversation. I post a discussion question on social media, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. For the audience, right? Come join us in the conversation. Answer the question. I'll be there. Angela will be there. Other people from the community will be there. It's fun. If you're not already following us on social media, the links are in the show notes. All right, back to where we left off. All right, so this is a childhood dream that you were following. You've talked a little tiny bit about this, but because education is so much of a financial commitment and takes up so much of your time, so tell us how 13 years as a student, you're raising a family, you've got a partner, you've got some support at home. What were some of the things that you guys did financially to you mentioned that you were running a very lean house,
Yeah.
living very lean. How did you guys make it happen? What were some of the conversations that you guys had at home about making the sacrifices to be able to do this for such a long time?
So it was more difficult when I was doing my science degree because there was no guarantee that I would get into medical school.
Okay.
And it did take more than one application to get into medical school. But once you're in medical school, the banks pretty much throw money your way and, want very much for you to use up your line of credit. So we did live lean. We didn't travel. We didn't do a lot of things. We would eat mac and cheese, and there are ways to keep your
Yeah.
budget lower, but we still had to pay for daycare. We still had to, pay for housing and mortgage, but it was nice to have a line of credit there, but then you got to pay that off once everything's
Yeah.
done.
Yeah.
Yeah, it adds up pretty quickly.
Do you think that from this perspective, your accounting experience may have been a tool that helped you make solid decisions or at least understand the financial decisions you were making? Do you think that it was a valuable skill?
Sure. Physicians, we don't get taught a lot of business stuff in medical school. So a lot of physicians come out and from a financial perspective, they struggle a little bit with setting up budgets. So that helped me a little bit. I still
Yeah.
love my Excel spreadsheets. I'm pretty diligent about getting my budgets done and staying on budget. So that did help. There's a lot. I went into accounting because I like math as well. It wasn't something I was as passionate about, but I did like math and I did like budgeting, and that's still something that I do every day.
All right. Very good. All right. So you talked about this a little bit, but let's go back to it. You felt a lot of pressure to follow the safe path from your original community that was like, a job, a certificate, don't dream too big.
Yeah.
And then you pushed yourself through against this doubt to follow your dream that you'd had since you were a child. The resilience is showing up in the conversation that we're having. You mentioned in your intake form that this experience of pushing through this taught you more about personal growth than any textbook ever could. So,
Yeah.
what were some of the things? Personal growth is like this beautiful word.
Hmm.
The part of growing as a person doesn't always feel good in my experience. Talk a little bit about that. Like, what was the growth that was happening? How did it feel? When did you realize it was growth as opposed to just, life is hard right now?
Yeah. So I feel like I've failed multiple times in life, and at various things. I failed the third grade. I failed in university. I failed on occasion, and being able to get back up, being able to formulate a plan on, okay, so I have failed at this. It did not work out well. What is my plan? Where am I going to go from here? And not wallowing in that I'm a failure. So the more times I have failed, the easier it is getting for me to get back up. And now it's gotten to the point where I'm less afraid of failure, and I'm okay to put things out there, and if it flops, right? So I listened to a podcast once and he said you should aim to fail at least 5 times a month. And I thought, "Oh my gosh, like who wants to fail 5 times a month?" But in truth, it has made me challenge myself so much more and not be afraid to put things out there, because I need to fail 5 times this month, which means I'm going to succeed probably, 10, 15 times. And as I become less afraid of failure, I seem to be achieving more. So I am still practicing as a family physician. I have 2 podcasts. I've written a book. There's so many things that I am not afraid to try now, whereas I think I would have been terrified of those things, 20 years ago. But yeah, so I've been laid off from my job before, and that's, that sucks. It hurts, but I know I'm going to be okay because I know I've got these skills. I know I can work hard. I know I can achieve things. So I don't really see them as failures so much as like setbacks. So
Yeah,
being able
no.
to get back up every time has just made me stronger and less afraid to try new things.
I love that. So you mentioned that one of these, what is the earliest? So I'm going to try and uncover where that original message of like you can get back up and try again,
Hmm.
or the obstacle is not permanent. The
Yeah,
failure is not a permanent obstacle. So what's the third grade? You failed
yeah.
third grade. What's the first time that you remember, like, or if you can pinpoint it, realizing it's like I have to go back and try this again, or I get to go back and try that again? Where do you think that message came, that reality or that attitude of perseverance? Where do you think
Yeah.
it earliest started?
So I think my ability to get back up and be successful and be okay with getting back up didn't come until I was in my like 20s.
Okay.
And because when I failed the third grade, I did not get back up. I had a lot of shame when I started that third grade, like the second time around. So much shame. I would hide in the corner. I would assume that people wouldn't be my friend because now I'm the person who failed and, didn't. So I kind of hid in the corner, and I learned to make friends by, shape shifting and being a people pleaser and doing
Okay.
whatever I could. I would avoid conflict at all costs. And those kind of coping strategies stayed with me for a long time. And it made it so that I was easily influenced by people, which is probably why I didn't go to, medical school or in the first place, because I was easily influenced by some of these messages. And it wasn't until I started seeing some successes and going to a lot of therapy and learning to like not be a people pleaser and learning to love myself as I am. That's kind of what it took for me to get out of those old coping mechanisms that I had, and learning that if I fail, it's still going to be okay. I can do this. But it was like baby steps, right? Little failures, and being able to get back up. And then I would just become more and more resilient over time. But it wasn't until I was quite a bit older with lots of therapy that I was able to kind of get through some of that and learn to not be a people pleaser, learn to care a little bit less about what people think of me. But it's a daily process. It's something I
Certainly.
need to work at. Yeah.
So then I'm going to ask a question that we've talked about before, but with this new lens that this was a piece of you that you were learning about in your 20s, you lived through the experience of being the third grade you
Yeah.
and learning those coping mechanisms and developing ways of masking and behaving in ways that you thought would get you alignment and friends and support. Does that also mean then that when you were pursuing the accounting certificate and diploma instead of med school, had you pushed that dream down? Like, did you know it was still there and you were, or were you like, no, no, that's fine. Had you pushed it so far down that you weren't paying attention to it because of you, or it was still
No,
there?
it was always there.
It was always there and
And
you were
it
always
was
aware of that
always there.
voice.
And I
Okay.
felt like I was almost, I don't want to use the word settling, but I was like, this just reconfirms everything I've been told, right?
Yeah.
I went to public school. People like us don't become physicians. And that just what that first year of failing university just reconfirmed that. And I was okay being an accountant. I knew I would be like good
Yeah.
at it. I'm
Very
good at math.
respected career. Yeah.
Yeah. And but it's not what I wanted. And at some
Yeah.
point I my position became redundant and I got laid off. And that's when I started thinking about do I continue getting more schooling and become a better accountant,
Yep.
or do I switch gears altogether? And I met with a career counselor, and she's like, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I was like, I've always wanted to go to medicine, but I can't because of this. I had my long list of excuses, and then she just said, "Well, like, why not?"
Oh my
And
goodness. Okay.
those two words stuck with me all the way home, and it did not take long after that to get a budget going. And
Do you remember
as
her
my
name?
partner said, piss or get off the pot was what my
Right.
partner said. And he's
When you
like,
talk
you
to him.
either need, yeah, he was like, you either need to do it, and he's like, I will support you, which was like, I needed to hear that, and or you need to be okay with the fact that you're never going to be a doctor, and you need to be okay with that, because he's like, I'm tired of hearing about this, and if you're not going to be okay with it, then you need to go for it.
I love this. So you had the support of your partner, which is really important and cannot be ignored.
That was, yeah.
Do you have any recollection? And you may not. You may not. Sometimes there are these conversations with people or
Mhm.
encounters with people that are pivotal, but we don't know it at the time.
Yeah.
Do you have any recollection of the name of the person
I
who had
I
had
do
the
not
chance
know
said
her
why
name.
not? Okay.
Yeah, I do not know her name, but she completely changed the course of my life. And I really feel, and some people might not resonate with this, but there are like angels on earth, right? People
Yeah.
who you meet for like such a short period of time, and something that they do or say completely changes the direction that you take in your life. And I get chills just thinking about it. I feel like she's one of those people for me. There have been a couple of key moments in my life where somebody has swooped in, said something, did something, and it changed where I went. And yeah, it's just, I don't know if they're angels. I don't know what it is,
Yeah. No,
but
it works.
it's
One of the reasons that I love this story of your perseverance and the choices that you were making, and was very excited to have this conversation, not just once, but twice, is the socio message, like the message in the community and in the like sort of zeitgeist of humanity, modern humanity, that you were the only people who get to go to medical school and the only people who get to be
yeah.
doctors are the people who are at the top of their class, who
Hmm.
have the timing, the support, and the finances to be able to march this road from middle school all the way on through residency and professionalism. Today, you are a doctor. You have achieved this goal.
Yeah.
Dr. Angela Downey, a family physician, you did it.
Hmm.
And so I asked you, I've asked you a lot of questions about the motivation and the perseverance and so on and so forth. Today, I want to ask you if the change that you experienced in your life, so 18-year-old Angela to Angela today, the change that you experienced by following this very, very hard road and conquering all of these obstacles along the way, is it what you hoped and dreamed that it would be to be Dr. Angela?
So I feel like I'm now living my best life. I am blessed and lucky to have this career that I love and enjoy. but I don't have to work as many hours as what, some people are like, oh, you're a physician, you work tons and tons of hours. But that's a choice that you get to make. I get to choose if I want to work 50 or 60 hours a week. I get to choose if I want to work 20 hours a week. And I've chosen to work 20 hours a week doing that. And then I've got my 2 podcasts and my plants that I take care of. There's so many things that I love to do, and I'm finally getting to explore those things and have the ability to write a book. So there's so many things that I am loving about life right now. And yeah, I'm glad that I'm here. I'm glad that I have options
Very, very
and
nice.
and
All right.
faith in myself that I can do it.
Yeah, and probably, I mean, would you say that the obstacles and the perseverance, having to make all those decisions along the way, lined you up to be able to say, okay, well, if I got to do this my way, I also get to design my career my way.
Yeah,
Like, yeah.
absolutely.
So, and because otherwise, if you're never in a position or you don't have an example of somebody having that, I think that's when you're like, well, there's only one way to make a chocolate cake. I can't draw outside the
Hmm.
lines. Like, you either have to be
Hmm.
forced to through circumstances or have somebody show you as an example, like, oh, no, we
Yeah.
can do whatever we want. So,
Yeah.
all right. So, in a
100%.
second, I'm going to do the final fun questions. I want to give
Okay.
you a chance to talk about your
Hmm.
and how people can find you to find out more about what you're doing online.
Sure. So my first podcast, which has been around for about a year and a half, is called The Codependent Doctor, and that deals with codependency. So different different coping mechanisms that we develop when we're growing up and how those are affecting us now as adults. So whether that's being a people pleaser, perfectionist, carrying a lot of anxiety. So it's a lot podcast with a lot of mental health type topics and learning to find worthiness in yourself. So, not needing validation from other people to feel worthy, not relying on other people for your worthiness. So that's my first podcast, and then I have a new one that's starting in September called Paging Dr. Mom, and it is a podcast that is going to support professional women who are juggling careers and families and that invisible workload that's there. So it's going to be more of an interview style podcast. I'm really excited about it. And I do have my book as well, which is a codependency recovery workbook called Enough as I Am, and a
Yes.
journal. Yeah, a 365-day guided journal called Enough as I Grow.
Very good. And the links for those, Enough as I Am and the 365 Journal, they're both available on Amazon, and those links are in the
Yeah.
show notes. So that's spectacular. I'm wondering whether or not we're about to go in the world of like professional women talking about balancing all of these things, whether or not we're about to call this like round two, because there were a bunch of books and things written about 10 years ago about it. And I wonder whether or not we're
Yeah.
about to step into, all right, that was round one, like let's try it again. And
Yeah.
here's round two, which will be just very interesting. Totally a
Hmm.
back channel conversation but that's a really, really important conversation because there is no magic wand where we can say, oh, yeah, you know, all of this can happen at the same time. It's like we really
Yeah.
need tools to be able to enjoy it and do it and create the lives that we want. All right. So, very good. Are you ready for the final fun questions?
Sure.
So this is hilarious because I love these questions to bring me joy, but I didn't rewrite these from the first interview. So we talked about it before we started. Like I'm
Hmm.
asking you these again, but you were like, I don't remember what it was. I don't either. We're gonna see if you remember them as you go. So if you get a deja vu feeling, let me know. All right.
Okay.
What is something that you do for yourself that you would consider self-care?
Going outside and just breathing, bringing, getting some deep breaths in and just focusing on the leaves blowing in the trees and focusing on like what can I hear, what can I see, what can I smell, and just kind of bringing myself into the present moment. It just gets rid of so much anxiety, just being outside with nature.
Do you do that as a Canadian? Do you do that even in the midst of the Canadian winter, or do you make an adjustment and go into like
Mm.
a 3 season porch?
It gets cold, but yeah, I tend to get lazy. I don't want to put my winter coat on to go outside. So
So the outside
oftentimes
through
I'll
the
just,
window.
yeah, or I'll sit in my office and just close my eyes and do some deep breathing in my office.
Very nice. I was just curious as a tropical resident, where I say this is our winter now. It's so unpleasant outside. I'm inside all the time in the summer. But all right. So if you want to treat yourself with something that makes you feel special, what do you think of first? I'm going to give you multiple choice here. Travel, retail shopping like clothes or jewelry, whatever, an experience like a spa day, a nice meal at home or at a restaurant, a concert or other entertainment, or something else.
Yeah. I know I'm supposed to say something like real self-care comes from like setting boundaries and teaching people how to treat you. But in truth, when I think it all depends on how much time I have. I love spa days. I love being in outdoor pools and whatnot. Spa's great. If I have more time, I would travel.
Beautiful answer. All right. So now here's a question that is just a random person question. What is the earliest first major news event that you kind of remember, like global or national news
Yeah.
event that you remember from when you were young?
I think I said this the first time, and I probably should have thought the question through more over the time. But what first comes to mind is 9/11. I think
Yeah.
that was the first thing that happened that I thought to myself as soon as it happened, this is going to change the world as I see it right now. There's probably little news stories, but that one really kind of shakes me. So
No, I think
there's,
that's, yeah.
yeah,
I mean, that's one of those things that, I mean, sometimes they come up in conversation that where were you when like things
yeah,
happen. So like for generations past, where were you when JFK was shot? Where
yeah,
were you when the man landed on the moon? That kind of stuff. Where were you?
yeah.
So
Princess
yeah.
Diana would have been
Oh,
before that.
Princess
That was
Diana.
that's another big one where I knew exactly where I was when that happened.
But
Michael
that was,
Jackson.
that was such a that was like an epic event, but it wasn't like traumatic though. It was like the princess
Yeah,
wedding.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
there's stories like that, but 9/11 was the first one that really shook me and knew right away when I saw it, this was going to change the world as I knew it.
Yeah, that's a big one. All right, that's it. Dr. Angela Downey, thank you so much for sharing your story and
Amazing.
being a wonderful guest on the show.
Thank you, Amy. Thanks for doing what you do. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for listening today. I hope that you enjoy the show. And before I go, I want to encourage you to become a bigger part of the conversation. Obviously, subscribe wherever you're listening to the show. Listen to more episodes. That'd be great. Again, please write a review and tell your friends about the show. That truly is a great help for getting the show in front of new people. Okay, but more fun for you yourself, head over to imperfectadulting.com and join the email community. You'll get some free stuff right away, and that way you'll begin to get the emails about the podcast. This includes the links for the special offers from the guests, and it's the only way to get that. Also, if you aren't in the mood to listen, I actually include an article directly in those emails. Whee! Now, if you love this and you crave more time with me, Amy, as a coach, a mentor, or just adultier adult, numero uno, check out The Village. If you have a story you want to share with the listeners, I'd love to hear from you. I have an open application. Just let me know you want it. And that's a wrap for today. Until next time, remember, the journey is the destination. Ralph Waldo Emerson said that, not me. Well, until just now, I did just say it. But what I want you to hear today is that if your adulting journey isn't going the way you expected, that may not mean that you're lost. It may just mean that you're on your way. This is Amy Stone, signing off. The Imperfect Adulting Podcast is created and produced by Amy Stone and Amy Says So. Anything expressed on this show is offered as entertainment, and the views of the guests may not always represent the ideas and viewpoints of the host. That's me. Amy does not intend or hold herself out to provide professional advice or recommendations of any kind. In the end, you and you alone need to make those kinds of decisions based on your personal and individual situation, needs, circumstances, and comfort level.